What's going on YouTube? It's Tej back again with another video, and today giving you my updated NFL power rankings. Excited to bring it your way. Hopefully you all enjoy today's video. If you do, hit that like button, it would help me out a ton. If you're new to the channel, want to see more football content, hit that big red subscribe button. And of course, most importantly, comment your takeaways on these power rankings down in the comment section. Who's your favorite team? Do you think I have them too high, too low? Who do you think I have too high, too low? All those sorts of fun conversations we can have down in the comment section. Let me hear your opinions down below. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. Actually, a fair amount of movement here on this last screen over the past couple weeks. Been pretty stagnant because, the worst teams in the NFL lose a lot, and, you can't move them up, but we have some movement here. Not for the Jags. They're staying put at 32. Pretty self-explanatory as to why. Giants actually down 3 spots, as are the Panthers. Now, if you were to ask me, do I think the Giants and the Panthers are the second and third worst teams in the NFL? I tell you no. But given how they played of late, their offensive lines are terrible. Both don't know what they're doing with their quarterback long term. I know the Giants said they're going to bring back Daniel Jones. I'm so excited to get into the offseason content here in a couple of months. But I don't hate that. But that said, they're not playing with Daniel Jones, and Carolina is starting Cam Newton, but getting more pass attempts from Sam Darnold. Weird situation, and Matt Rule thinks it's working. Scoreboard would say otherwise. They did play Tampa Bay, so that's obviously a tough draw there. But since they both lost in pretty not great fashions, they're down 3 spots each. Jets pick up a win. They knock off the Jags, and it felt like Trevor Lawrence late in that game was going to have the fourth quarter comeback. And I know it's been kind of rough this year, but it felt like that was going to be the first of those signature, like, hey, I'm a number 1 overall pick type of moments. And he fell short. So give credit to the Jets. They came up with a stop late when they needed it, and they got the dub. And then the Texans up 3 spots, and this is a team with like a legit win. Like, if you look at all these teams on this page, at least from 27 downward, maybe 28 downward from Houston and below, they have a legit, probably the best win of anybody on this screen. You could say the Lions with the Cardinals is up there, and then Washington's had some good wins. That point aside, beating the Chargers is actually a legitimate, like, it looks good on your resume. The Texans were, in the playoff hunt. That would bode well for their standings. But I know LA was, battling some COVID stuff, but Houston showed a ton of fight in this game. There were concerns they wouldn't even be able to field a full roster coming into this one. Davis Mills puts on a good show, has a couple of good passes, and they were able to pick on the weak, brittled secondary of the Chargers and made enough plays. And they made LA play from behind and then got some big takeaways and had the answer against Herbert in that offense. I know down Mike Williams and down some other players on that side of the football, but Texas made plays, and they earned that win. So one of the huge upsets this week, and they're up 3 spots for it. Lions down a spot. They battled tough with Atlanta. Now, a loss to Atlanta isn't necessarily a great thing, and Atlanta moved up a ton this week, and I'm not really happy about that, but we'll talk about that when we get there. But Lions covered the spread. They're still battling. The Fighting Dan Campbell's in full effect. Washington football team, one of the biggest movers this week, and it is in the wrong direction. This was a chance where, hey, if they knocked off Dallas in prime time in Dallas, they might have been moving up 5 spots and been right around the top 10. Instead, they got absolutely obliterated on national television. I mean, this was an absolute travesty, a disaster, whatever word you want to put to it. This team self-imploded in front of the eyes of millions of viewers. Not a good scene. The offense, Taylor Heineke, let's just stop this. He's not a good quarterback. He's just trash. The offensive line didn't look good. They were picking on Eric Flowers, Micah Parsons here on your screen in specific. And then on the defense, Dallas's defense overall just shut down everything Washington tried to do outside of maybe Antonio Gibson. He looked pretty good. And on the other side of the ball, Washington's defense had no answer for Dallas's offense. I mean, the Cowboys' passing attack was back in full effect. Plus, they ran the football well. Washington just did not look good. You got dudes fighting on the sideline. Not a good look for any Washington football team fans out there. Seattle down a spot. Losing at home against the Bears and Nick Foles. Do I need to say much more than that? Obviously not ideal. And again, I'm excited for the offseason. What is this team going to do? This is one of the most intriguing, first dominoes that could fall once we get to the offseason. So I'm excited to see what unfolds. On to the top 24. Chicago Bears up 5 spots. Now, I know 5 spots sounds like a lot when you beat Seattle, but part of it, if you go back to the screen before this, ton of movement and a lot of teams falling down below the Bears. Therefore, they kind of leapfrogged everybody else. Not necessarily in love with that because the Bears, they don't need to go up 5 spots. But in this 24 to 28 range is what feels like where Chicago should be. So I'm not too mad about it. Broncos, I know they lose to the Raiders in an ugly 17-13 game. But it was with Drew Lock, and he didn't necessarily play bad. Really, Pat Shurmur. I think this game put even larger microscope on him and saying, hey, here's the problem. And I really hope, this is offseason talk here, but I do hope Denver holds on to Vic Fangio, and I hope their plan for this offseason is, hey, let's go get that veteran quarterback, whether it's Russell Wilson, whether it's Deshaun Watson, whether it's Aaron Rodgers, probably not going to be Derek Carr in division, maybe it's Jimmy Garoppolo, whatever the case may be. Go get that QB upgrade and then let them be a part of the decision for who the OC is. I think that's the best way they can go about it. So if it's Aaron Rodgers, maybe you're bringing over Nathaniel Hackett or maybe his QB coach from Green Bay. Whatever the case may be. I think that's how they should play the situation. Keep Fangio. That defense is playing great. Get the veteran quarterback. Let them be part of the offensive coordinator hunt. And I think this team is ready to compete. I just don't want to see Fangio leave because he's done so much good with that defense. That said, they lost, but I didn't want to move them. They're playing with the backup quarterback, and they fought a division opponent pretty close. I almost knocked something off the side of this island I'm sitting at. Falcons are up 3 spots, so again, Chicago and Atlanta, they move up more, so don't really worry about the numbers next to it, but a lot of that's just because of the shifting of the board, and they gotta get pole vaulted up a little bit more than I'd like, but Falcons win a game, that's a good sign. This team's in and around the playoff hunt. I don't really think they're the 22nd best team, and that was also part of the reason I didn't want to move the Broncos, because in a neutral field, I'd take Denver over Chicago right now, especially even if it was Locke versus Foles. I think I'd go Denver there. I just like their defense more. And even Atlanta-Denver, I'd probably go Denver there, but I couldn't move the Broncos up after a loss. That's not how this is going to work. But this is a spot where these two teams, or these three teams really, they played one another on a neutral. It'd be pretty close. But Atlanta, congratulations on the win. Kyle Pitts still looks pretty fantastic. Honestly, great use of the 4th overall pick, especially considering it's a tight end. Could have been a lot worse. That point aside, New Orleans Saints down a spot. You lose on primetime. That's not necessarily ideal, but with your 4th string quarterback, right, and Ian Book, Notre Dame fan here, and he just didn't fit the part. It didn't look like he belonged. That second pass he throws, pick 6, maybe it was deflected. It didn't look like it on national TV. It just looked like a bad pass thrown behind the receiver and house call all day for Miami. So he just didn't look good, and this is gonna be tough for this team to win games with below average quarterback play. They have some nice pieces around it, but obviously last night kind of just showed where the Saints are at right now. Vegas up 2 spots. Ugly win, but a win nonetheless, so give them credit. They come out with a dub. They're up 2 spots. Ravens, Browns, Steelers all down a spot, and there's also some more cascading once we get on the next screen. But look, I picked the Ravens to win last week because I saw it as a necessary game that had to have. That was with me thinking Tyler Huntley was going to play. Josh Johnson wasn't terrible, but wasn't able to elevate to nearly what Joe Burrow did, let alone anything close to that. So the injuries are piling up. The Ravens look like they're going to fall out of the playoff mix. Actually, I think right now they're not even the 7th seed anymore. It's Miami. So, tough time to be a Ravens fan. Looked like this could have been a year where they could have made a run to the Super Bowl, but the injuries stacked up against you. Browns down a spot. It's amazing they only lost by 2, right? Like, your starting quarterback throws 4 picks, 3 in the first half, and you're still in it. You cover the spread in Lambeau on Christmas Day. That's really impressive. And it speaks to how good the roster is, despite Baker Mayfield really holding this squad back. So Cleveland, down on their spot. They got to try to get some better play out of Baker. And they still have a shot to win the AFC North, which is crazy. But if they can figure out Baker, that offense, this team has good pieces around him. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm beyond done with this team. Honestly, I really contemplated moving them down a little bit more, but the Steelers had beaten both the Browns and the Ravens this year. So this AFC North log jam right here, basically pretty interchangeable, but Pittsburgh got put on notice by the Kansas City Chiefs. And it's one of those games where I think you can say the same thing about the Ravens and the Bengals. Sometimes the question comes up, did this team earn the win or did this team earn the loss more? Like, and that's your conversation. Was it a win or was it a loss for their side? I think both in the Ravens and the Steelers game, it's both. Pittsburgh looked terrible. And I mean, if Big Ben wasn't already fully set on retiring, he definitely is now. The offensive line was exposed beyond all belief, and the defense had no answer. The defense should be our strength, and Steelers fan here. The Steelers defense should be the strength of that team. And, when you leave them out on the field out to dry all the time, eventually going to start giving up big plays. And, it's also tough. TJ Watt wasn't playing every snap. He got a little banged up in the game, so you lose your most impactful player on the roster. That makes it a little more tough as well. But Pittsburgh was just target on their back, and Chiefs hit a dead eye. I mean, come on, that was rough. But then also the Chiefs earned that, and we'll talk about that later on. On to the top 16, the Minnesota Vikings down a spot. 1 possession loss to the Rams. That sounds pretty good. Also, can we just talk about this picture? Fantastic. Joe Burrow's the man. But the Vikings battled hard, lost at home, though, and it looks like they'll probably miss the playoffs. Because now they got the Packers this week. Probably lose that. Probably beat the Bears 8-9, just outside that 7 spot. So a little unfortunate. The Vikings lost too many games this year, including one against the Bengals week 1, which, at the time was a little questionable. Now it actually doesn't look like that bad of a loss. That point aside, we're on to Philadelphia Eagles at number 15. This team, when they commit to running the ball, they can do so much off of it. Like a power running attack, you can set up a spot where the defense has to collapse and respect that. And Lane Johnson standing wide open in the end zone, catching a touchdown pass. That was an awesome moment. And then also a couple of nice plays from Jalen Hurts. I know this conversation is brought up nonstop, but at this point, I have a hard time thinking they're going to go draft somebody other than maybe Malik Willis, because he's going to have to come with the red shirt. So you might want to roll with Hurts and just sit Willis for the time being, and then hope maybe either Hurts, earns you a pick down the line in a trade, or he just plays well enough, earns a starting spot, and you can ship off Willis and get some of that return on investment. But the defense has been solid. They're figuring out the best ways to put Darius Slay in a position of success. He's been great from like week 6 onward. And they're getting good pass rush, especially from the interior. Alex Singletary, linebacking core, making a play. That's one of the weaker units on this team. They even were able to get a pick 6 in this contest. So, really strong showing for the Eagles. And they're going to make the playoffs over the Vikings now. I mean, they have the clear, easier path to get in there. So, good on y'all, Eagles fans. LA Chargers, that's an embarrassing loss to Houston. They just didn't look right. And I mean, we talked about the COVID concerns for LA. Houston had way more. Now, granted, you could say the Texans weren't playing without a player like Mike Williams, and I would totally understand that. That's fair. It's a quantity versus quality discussion there, but there was no excuse for the Chargers to come out that flat. Josh Jackson looked like a great fill-in for Austin Eckler. And you still have Keenan Allen. There's nobody on Houston's secondary that should be able to touch Keenan Allen. And, a couple of turnovers there from Herbert. Tried to get the cover 2 beater. Nice play from the safety from the Texans. Takes away what could have been a touchdown. Instead, it's, a pick. And I think the Texans even scored on that next drive. So, big point swing there and a momentum swing as well. So, Chargers just laid a dud. They came out flat out, all this rambling aside. But that's a disappointing loss, and it looks like the Chargers are going to miss the playoffs because of it. So that is a huge miss there for Staley, Herbert, and the Chargers in general. Cardinals down 3 spots. You want to call them the fraud nulls, or I saw some tweets saying maybe the Cardinals just stink. I don't want to go that far. They're still going to make the playoffs, and I think they'll play a competitive game in the wild card, but they're probably not going to win it, because at this point right now they're the 5 seed. Them versus I think the 4 at this point is Tampa. Yeah, I'm not loving that. And even if it's not, Cardinals and Dallas about to play in a couple weeks, but or maybe even this week. I'd take Dallas based off what I saw 2 nights ago. So I don't know. It's just going to be a tough matchup for Arizona in the wild card. And crazy, a couple weeks ago it felt like they had a straight shot to the number 1 seed, first round bye. But this team is really missing DeAndre Hopkins right now. And where's Rondale Moore? That's what I got to know. And that's where a lot of people have been calling out Cliff Kingsbury. And this team's now gone stagnant. The offense doesn't look the same the second half of the year. Same thing that happened last season. But where's Rondale Moore, right? Like, you lose DeAndre Hopkins, you can't control injuries. But you can control how you combat that. How do you supplement that loss? There was not enough Rondale Moore in this game. And that's just, that dude's a big play waiting to happen. I need to see more of him. And I haven't yet. Maybe this week that'll change. So give him some time. But yeah, disappointing outcome for Arizona. Dolphins, after the win on Monday Night Football, up 2 spots. This team's rolling. Now, the defenses look really, really good. If you do look at their, they're now, 8-game win streak. It's been against some pretty bad quarterbacks, including Ian Book, right? The exception to that is Lamar Jackson. And really, they kind of were they were the first team at the onset of Lamar Jackson's bad play before he got hurt. And really, they kind of created the game plan against Lamar. Hey, blitz the house. And if you bring safeties, just make it like a laned rush, like it's special teams or something like that. Play cover 0, force their wide receivers to beat you, and contain Lamar, but also get pressure on him. He's not that good against it. And, that's been something that teams have replicated weeks after the Dolphins did it. So, Brian Flores and the Dolphins defense clicking right now, had some favorable matchups, but also the offense has been just good enough, right? You even watched the game last night. Jalen Waddle just has this big playability, and this is why I legitimately considered making him wide receiver 1. There were plenty of people who did have him at wide receiver 1, but he was one of those blue chippers for me, even if he was the 3rd wide receiver in my position rankings. Dude's a big play waiting to happen, and they haven't really tapped into his downfield, vertical, go ball, post ball type of ability that he brings to the table. He's just been an underneath option type of wide receiver. So they haven't even fully got into his max potential, which is really, really crazy to say. And Tua continues to play well within this new offense. I know it wasn't great against the Jets last week. Bounce back game against a solid defense. New Orleans Dolphins are looking good and in that 7th spot now, which that versus whoever the 2 seed in the AFC ends up being, could be fun. And it might end up being Tennessee here at 11, which big win on Thursday Night Football, staving off a red-hot 49ers team. And that defense, that was one of those games where we know the Titans defense is a really solid unit, but at the start, with the opening script from the 49ers, we'll talk about that here in a moment. But outside, that opening script from San Francisco, it looked like this was going to be a blowout from that point onward. But the Titans defense, that second drive, bend but don't break, get the big pick, and turn that game around from that point moving forward. And that was really the difference in this contest. San Francisco just did not take advantage of all their opportunities in the first half. And the Titans defense made enough plays. So really excited to see what this team shakes out to be, right? If they get Derrick Henry back, if Julio Jones can stay healthy, A.J. Brown balled out against San Francisco. If they have that full arsenal of weapons around Ryan Tannehill when we get to the playoffs, this team's as live as it gets. It's going to be fun. Patriots still inside the top 10, but down 4 spots. Look, I mean, obviously not the outcome that I think a lot of Patriots fans would want, but they battled the Bills hard, especially after falling behind. I know Mac Jones didn't play great, but he still got it back to one possession game, and they nearly had, that late stop, got the ball back. Josh Allen had one nearly costly play, finding the hands of J.C. Jackson. Not often he drops picks, but he did on Sunday, and that really was a huge difference in this one. But I still think the Patriots are a team that's built for a good postseason run. They can run the football. That was on display Sunday. The defense is still solid, even though I know the Bills had some big plays and had their moments against it, but Josh Allen really had to shovel passes over to Stephon Diggs and underhand passes to other wide receivers. He had to play backyard football to really break down that Pats defense, which I think is a good sign. That's what you have to resort to. There are worse outcomes. You didn't have any busted coverages resulting in touchdowns. So it's one of those things where it could definitely be worse once you take a step back and look at it in a different lens. But if they can get Mac Jones back on track where he was mid-season, I have no worries about New England. Bengals up 3 spots. Joe freaking Burrow tore up Baltimore. They showed a stat on CBS of QBs to have over 400 yards and 3 touchdowns against the Ravens, and both Manning brothers, Breeze and Brady, 4 of the best quarterbacks I've seen in my lifetime. 3 maybe the best, and then there's Eli in there who's pretty good in his prime, and then Burrow's done it twice. That's unreal. And I give a ton of credit to Zach Taylor. Part of the reason I took the Ravens was desperation. Teams that go into games more desperate tends to win. But also, I just didn't think Zach Taylor had it in him to just turn the ball over to Joe Burrow and say, hey, pick on that secondary. I figured, hey, this will be another week of where they run 55 to 60% of the time on early down situations. They'll go Mixon, force Burrow to try to make a play on 3rd down. But that wasn't the case. They had Joe Burrow slinging it from start to finish. And what do you know? Good things come after that. All 3 wide receivers made an impact. Mixon had a solid game, especially as a pass catcher. This is what the Bengals need to be doing. And if they do this week in and week out, makes the defense's job easier, and it makes them serious. And I'm being dead serious when I say this. They become legit AFC championship game contenders. I think they can get that far if they play like they did this past Sunday. So I'm not trying to sip on the Kool-Aid too much on Cincy, but I think they have a shot there if they play like that. On to the top 8. I know there's going to be some controversy here. But a lot of people are staying the same. Bills are up a spot, up to number 8. They handled business in a game they had to win. Now they lead the AFC East. That's what we want to see from Josh Allen. Hey, this game doesn't have 50-mile-an-hour winds. I know the weather was still not necessarily great for throwing the football, but this is a little bit more normal. And Josh Allen in a quote-unquote must-win game to not only get in the playoffs, but to overtake the number 1 spot in the division. He showed up. He balled out. And I know he's a bit of a roller coaster. He has those ups and downs, but this is what we talk about. Even if you don't think Josh Allen is in himself a top 5, top 7 quarterback, he can give you games where he is. And it's just like the argument with Stafford, where I don't necessarily think he lives in the top 10 or the top 7, top 5, but when he plays well and everything's clicking and he has his better games, he is then in that discussion. He gives you games where you can win Super Bowls and make postseason runs, and that's what the Bills are going to hope for. Hey, if we can get 3 of Josh Allen's good games, and this is the same thing the Rams are saying, if we can get 3 of Matt Stafford's good games, 4 games in the postseason, I guess, if they're going to play in the first round, in the wild card round, that's all we need. We need 4 games of them playing like a top 10 quarterback, not being, but playing like, and we're good. We have everything around them. So really encouraging sign for Buffalo. I got them back into the top 8, and I think this top 8 legit Super Bowl contenders. Now let's get to where I think I'm going to catch some flag. I'm not moving the 49ers. They lost to Tennessee, yes. But did we think that San Francisco was going to win out for the rest of the season? No. And if anything, that game is more about Tennessee earning a win and staving off a red-hot 49ers team than anything else. And it was bend but don't break. I think the encouraging sign for 49ers fans should be, y'all went up and down the field in that first half. Now, it didn't get as many points as you should. It should have been 21-0, not 10-0. And that's 11 points that obviously you'd love to have added onto the final score. But that game could have played out differently. And Jimmy Garoppolo is one of those guys where, just like I'm talking about Josh Allen, Matt Stafford, Garoppolo is a little bit more extreme than those two. But he's just one of those guys where you know he's not a top 10 quarterback. But sometimes he gives you play. And, you saw PFF quoting it. QBR was used as a stat to highlight it going into that Thursday night game. Since like week 7 or 8 onward till that Thursday night game, he'd been one of the best, highest graded, most efficient quarterbacks in the league. So he's capable of that type of play. I'm not saying he's a top 10 quarterback, but he is capable of being that good within that offense. So I'm not going to move San Francisco. This was obviously a tough night for Jimmy Garoppolo. And if anything, part of the reason I'm hoping I'm not moving is because I hope they make the move to Trey Lance. It's a little concerning at this point. We haven't seen him. It makes it seem like he's just not ready yet, because I didn't really think Jimmy Garoppolo was going to be too much of a factor of when they felt comfortable turning it over to Lance. But maybe this is like the key turning over in the ignition. If not this week, if Garoppolo struggles again this upcoming weekend of action, then they'll probably make the change before the playoffs. But maybe that's why I'm not moving him, because I'd like to see what Lance can do. But I'm still buying into the 49ers. The defense looked really solid, honestly, outside of getting picked on by A.J. Brown. So, a top 7 wide receiver in the NFL can have his way against Josh Norman. We would expect that, but no one else really had a huge game against him. And I still like the offense. I love the opening script. Kyle Shanahan, when he's in his bag, that offense is gorgeous. Brandon Ayuk's making plays. Deebo Samuel looks great. George Kittle, fantastic. The running game's sufficient. They're going to get Elijah Mitchell back here, hopefully next week. So I'm not moving the 49ers. I know they lost. I moved the Titans up, but I'm going to keep San Francisco at 7. Cowboys at 6. I mean, they decimated Washington. And if it weren't for the teams above them winning, I'd love to move the Cowboys up. But that was a signature win in front of millions of eyes, right? Defense played fantastic. Trevon Diggs, it's his 11th pick. The pass rush was fantastic. They're using Micah Parsons to pick on weak links across the offensive line. I love that. That's inspired. And then the offense, Kellen Moore was in his bag. Great play calls. Dak Prescott looked healthy, looked like who he was first, 8-9 weeks of the year. Wide receivers got in the mix. Zeke, Pollard, they both look good. There's not much more I can say about the Cowboys. It was just a great overall showing for them on Sunday Night Football. Colts handle business, get the win on the road at Arizona, and fully establish themselves. If you didn't think of them as a top 5 team, the way they're playing right now, they have to be in that window now. I'm not saying overall I'd put them as one of the 5 best teams. I mean, clearly in my power rankings they are, but this is a week-by-week system. And right now, they are one of the hottest teams in football. The defense is clicking. Matt Eberflus has done a great job coaching up that side of the ball. And Jonathan Taylor, even when it's not super efficient, he can still break off a 43-yarder, which enhances so much of what you can do. And then this week, the encouraging sign is Wentz didn't look great, but that last touchdown pass to Doolin, I mean, that's really all you need him to do. If Carson Wentz can give you 1 or 2 throws, just like Jimmy Garoppolo in the 49ers, if you get 1 or 2 good throws, above average throws from him in the right moments, you can coast off everything else you have on that roster. So it's not necessarily the best way of doing it, right? You'd like to have a Patrick Mahomes, a Tom Brady, where you can have an advantage in that position and that play throughout the entire contest. But the Colts and the 49ers each have their recipe and their formula. Those quarterbacks have those 1 or 2 plays go right as opposed to detrimentally wrong and become turnovers. They can beat just about anybody in the league. I'm not afraid to say it. Bucs at 4. That sounded so dramatic. I didn't mean to make all that out. But the Bucs stay put at number 4. Bounce back performance, no doubt. Took care of business against Carolina. Antonio Brown's still one of the best wide receivers in football. I am worried about the weapons long term, but it does sound like eventually Mike Evans will be added back into the fold. So that, plus, Gronk is back. You hope that he can become bigger and bigger part of the offense. Cameron Brate caught a touchdown this past weekend. Obviously, they have a lot of tight end depth, so they have ways to be able to combat, no Chris Godwin down the stretch, and hopefully Leonard Fournette. Lenny's kind of weird to call him that, but Leonard Fournette, hopefully he's back in the postseason if you're a Bucs fan. But still feeling optimistic about this team as we move close to the playoffs. The Chiefs, I thought about moving them up to 2, but I wasn't going to move the Rams down for a road win against a wild card contender. But the Chiefs exposed Pittsburgh, totally dominant win. The offense is fully back now. Now I'm not afraid to say they picked on somebody who wasn't the Steelers, and I know down the stretch they haven't gotten a whole lot of those too high looks that were kind of giving them some problems in the early to midseason point. But I think at this point this team has enough confidence, mojo, momentum in general to where they'll be able to combat that. And keep in mind, Kansas City embarrassed Pittsburgh without Travis Kelce, who go back 2 Thursday night football games ago against the Chargers. Travis Kelce might have been the most dominant player in that game, bar none. So they did everything they did against Pittsburgh without a guy like that. So, yeah. It's got to be good to be a Kansas City fan right now. Rams win a game on the road against a team right in that playoff conversation that's obviously impressive. And it wasn't necessarily a gaudy game from Stafford or anything like that, but they leaned on the running game. Sony Michel's been a really nice addition. Now they're going to get Cam Akers back potentially in a week or so. That is scary if you're a fan of a team in the NFC. But still getting some playmaking ability from those wide receivers. Cooper Kupp, obviously, in that Offensive Player of the Year conversation. Him and Jonathan Taylor both had good games, but not nearly as gaudy as what it's been over the past couple weeks. So that race is still really interesting. But, yeah, I like the Rams. And their defense made some plays down the stretch in this one as well. And the Green Bay Packers are still at number 1. My only concern is sometimes the offense just goes quiet, right? They're up 2 possessions against the Ravens. All of a sudden, it's a game decided by a 2-point conversion attempt with no time left on the clock, or with 30 seconds left on the clock, I should say. And then this past weekend, they're blowing out the Browns. Next thing you know, Cleveland's down to just 2 points with a chance to potentially get a field goal and win the game. So it's a little concerning how the offense sometimes just turns off. But, I mean, just look at what Matt LaFleur has done, coaching up Rodgers, not necessarily coaching up Rodgers, but scheming a way to keep Devontae Adams wide open. Devontae Adams is a beast on himself, but that offense helps put him in a position where he's always open and always getting the football. Jones and Dillon in the backfield, great. I mean, what more do you want me to say about Green Bay? They're playing like the best team in football right now. Case closed. And they're going to have the number 1 seed in the NFC, it looks like. So that's a huge advantage. Going through Lambeau, not an easy task. But that's going to do it for our Week 17 NFL Power Rankings. Tell me what you think down in the conversation. Apologies, I know I rambled a ton in this video, but hopefully it wasn't too annoying. Hopefully you all enjoyed the video instead. And if you did, hit that like button to help me out a ton. New to the channel, want to see more football content, hit that big red subscribe button. And of course, like I said, comment your takeaways down in the comments section. That's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. Till next time, my name is Tej, and I'm signing off.